Removed by Citizenship Western Samoa Act 1982 bill be now read for the first time. I nominate the Governance and Administration Committee to consider the bill. Madam Speaker, whawhitai loa whionga le whono whetalai mo lene awanua e mumua ona o whatulou atu le paia o le atu nuu I ona tulanga whaalupe. O te whatulou atu foi e le paia o alii ma tamaitai whaipule ua tātou whaatasi lene aso. Ma lo le soifua manuia ma le langa e mama. Madam Speaker, I want to acknowledge elders both past and present and those who are with us in the House. I want to acknowledge Reverend ministers and their families and community leaders, dignitaries from the Samoan High Commission, and I note that the Speaker of the Samoan Parliament is with us today in the public gallery with his delegation of Samoan MPs from both political parties. I want to acknowledge other MPs, former MPs that are here today. I note former National Party MP Arthur Anai, who is in the public gallery, and it is always good to see the Honourable Opito Sua William Seal back in this House, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to acknowledge Whaanana Efeso Collins, who did his best to teach me a mihi in Samoan, and noting that I am probably the worst Samoan language student he ever had. And although I am not Samoan, can I say that I am Samoan adjacent? All Pacifica peoples, all tangata moana are adjacent to each other. I mention Efeso because, like others from our generations, as this House was moving through the Dawn Raid's apology, he reached out to me, like many others, to tell me that there was more injustice to unravel, that there was further to go on this journey. Another Samoan friend of mine, Renee Dingwall's dad, Sua Han Swalga, who's over in Samoa at this time, told her to tell her friend, me, to get rid of this Western Samoa Citizenship Act. And so, Efeso, Renee, and all the Samoans that I grew up with, this is for you. Our parents' stories are our stories. Our grandparents' stories are our stories. Those narratives form our community's narratives. These conversations can be tough conversations, but they are important if we are to grow as a family of Pacific nations. I want to acknowledge Opito Sua William Seal, who guided us through one of those tough conversations through the Dawn Raid's apology. It is important work, and we must continue to build on that work, and I see this as another step in that journey. This was not the first time there has been an attempt to address this issue, and I did note before the presence of former National MP Arthur Anai in the public gallery and community members that brought a petition to this House in 2003. Over 9,000 people signed that petition. And I also note, and I noticed at the gallery, that my Auckland Uni fellow alumni, Dr. Tofilo Nina Kiriafi Ala, is here as well, along with Sireli Savia Paseta. And there are many others listening from home. And I make this observation, and it is this. If you have Pacific Islanders from different political parties who in our own different ways want what is best for our communities, then that is something that this House should take note of. And that note should be that we need to have our communities heard at the Select Committee. Madam Speaker, there is a bit of history here, and I want to traverse it a little bit to give context to the bill. It is Samoan history, but it is also New Zealand history. Learning about the Mau movement and the independence movement in Samoa is such an important part of our history, which will give New Zealanders a deeper understanding of New Zealand's imperial aspirations in the Pacific at the turn of the century and the painful consequences of those aspirations. What a lot of New Zealanders don't know is that New Zealand administered Samoa for 48 years as a part of the World War I effort on behalf of Britain from the then German colonial rule. New Zealand administered what we now know as Samoa, and the Americans administered what we now know as American Samoa. Madam Speaker, the New Zealand administration was so appalling and so bad that Prime Minister Helen Clark had to apologise in 2002. In 1948, New Zealand citizenship was established. We went from being British subjects to New Zealand citizens. And it was in 1982 that the Privy Council ruled that all Samoans born between 1924 and 1948 were British subjects, and because of that, from 1949 onwards, they were New Zealand citizens. As the years go by, Madam Speaker, more of these elders will pass. There are estimated that there are less than 5,000 remaining. These are important stories that need to be heard, and that is why this House needs to send this bill to the Select Committee. In the terms of the Privy Council, I want to acknowledge the pivotal role played by Pāti Māori and her family and the committee's organisers who pushed that case. Pāti Māori's contribution, we honour not only her personal and individual journey, but the collective struggle of Pacific peoples for equality and for justice. Madam Speaker, fairness is at the heart of this bill. We had a group of New Zealand citizens who had their citizenship recognised, then had that citizenship removed by statute. That is unfair, plain and simple. States should not be able to remove citizenship wholesale like that. It is unjust. This bill will address this injustice in two ways. It will repeal the Citizenship Western Samoa Act, remove it from the statute books, and the people who lost citizenship in 1982 will be entitled to apply for and receive citizenship by grant under the Citizenship Act 1977. This is important. The bill does not confer citizenship directly, but instead creates automatic eligibility to apply for and receive citizenship. It would not create new rights to citizenship for descendants of those whose citizenship were removed. As I said earlier, the youngest of these elders is now 75, Madam Speaker, and that is why it is important that now is the time for us to address these issues while they are still here. Madam Speaker, our international standing derives from our ability to influence the Pacific. Relational diplomacy is so important, particularly in the Pacific where we have geopolitical tensions playing out between bigger nations. This is something that we can do and do well. The well-being of our people, economy and environment are closely linked to that of our Pacific neighbours. It is our responsibility to continue thriving to improve and maintain these relationships. That relationship is always worth strengthening. Supporting Samoan elders signals to the Pacific that we take those relationships seriously, and that is why this House should send this bill to Select Committee. There has been speculation in the media that this will cause mass migration. That is not my intention. Citizenship broadly happens in three ways: by birth, descent, or by grant. This is citizenship by grant. Can we have a discussion on what that grant could look like that is practical and workable? I think we can. Solutions that could suit different perspectives of members across the House. We can, but only if we send this bill to Select Committee. Madam Speaker, the Pacific is one ocean, but has many waves. Each island represents a distinct wave in the vast ocean. They are all part of the same body of water. It speaks to the shared heritage, struggles and aspirations of Pacific peoples, emphasising the unity and the interconnectedness that transcends geographical boundaries. This highlights the significance of recognising and honouring the collective experiences and histories of Pacific communities, acknowledging the common challenges that we have faced and continue to face. Just as waves merge and flow together in the ocean, Pacific peoples come together united by our shared ancestry and cultural ties to navigate the currents of history and shape our collective identity. Madam Speaker, I started with the words of Whanana Efessel Collins, and I want to conclude with some of those words from his maiden speech. In his maiden speech, he talked about a saying in Samoan, and it goes, "E la tū whaamaunga se tangata." No one stands alone, no one succeeds alone, and for him, no one suffers alone. Madam Speaker, I want to add a little bit to that we succeed best when we succeed together. So I ask for this House to send this bill to the Select Committee. Madam Speaker, whawhetai tele lava, me taki rā nui nui. Thank you for the community for coming out to today. Hopefully your presence here in this House will inspire parties to take this, to vote for this bill on this first reading and to send it to Select Committee. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is that the motion be agreed to.
Madam Speaker.
I call Cameron Brewer.
Talofa lava. Madam Speaker, we in the National Party are opposing this Restoring Citizenship Removed by Citizenship Western Samoan Act 1982, and I just want to take you through some of our thinking. I'd also want to acknowledge my longtime friend and former colleague and former boss, Arthur Anai, in the public gallery, in the Speaker's gallery, and reinforce what the previous speaker was saying as far as the work, the advocacy that he's done, as have many over many years. When he was a national MP, 1996 to 2002, and ongoingly. Only a couple of weeks ago, he was getting around the halls of Parliament lobbying for progression on this issue. And so I want to acknowledge Arthur for his long time fight, and of course the many other Pacifica MPs. We have the Pacific Select Committee room, and we know how well represented the wider community, Samoa and New Zealanders, have been over many years now. I also want to acknowledge and pick up from the sponsor, our late friend and colleague, Efeso Collins. And I think it's somewhat fitting today that the Business Committee came out and announced that there will be a parliamentary acknowledgement of Efeso after question time, 3 o'clock, Tuesday the 30th of April. And I'm pleased his former leader, James Shaw, will be here before your valedictory the next day or two after that to pay tribute to Efeso. And so given the audience for this piece of legislation, I thought it was important to put out a public service announcement, 3 o'clock, Tuesday the 30th of April, for a tribute to Efeso. Our main point, Madam Chair, on this piece of legislation is that it presents itself in a private members' bill situation where we don't think it's the right format or forum. And we believe that this has been well canvassed and well argued over many years. One could argue 42 years since 1982. And if we look back since 1982, in that Muldoon administration, that national government, we've had 3 Labor governments since, the 4th, the 5th and the 6th. We've had 10 Prime Ministers. We've had an array of wonderful representation from our Pacifica community and from our Samoan community. We've had an apology from previous Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern on the Dawn raids in 2021. Again, that was an issue going back to the 70s. And of course the National Party supported that apology. So where there is a will to change things from a government perspective, and we've had 10 Prime Ministers and 2 national governments and 3 Labor governments since then, there has been the ability to make a statement and to do things. And as we saw with the apology of the Dawn raids, the Labor government stepped up there. And also the sponsoring member talked about Helen Clark's apology in 2002. And so things have, previous governments have had the will and done the thing. But our point is the governments of the past, of many stripes, of many different colours, red, blue, green, Te Pāti Māori, others, have not taken this up. And we would argue it's because legally the arguments have been exhausted over a 42-year period. And we are concerned that it creates a legal precedent. Legal experts will say to you that retroactively, interesting word, no, retroactively is the legal terminology, reinstating the citizens affected by citizenship, this act, sets a problematic precedent. And we want to ensure, as have previous administrations led by 10 previous Prime Ministers over 4 decades, that we have a legal framework in place that equates to fairness and equity. And so, Madam Speaker, our concern is that it does create a number of unprecedented measures, and it also creates a situation where we have got to focus at the moment on managing the immigration settings and adopting them accordingly to fit today's demands. And 173 non-New Zealand citizens migrated here in 2023. You would have seen, Madam Speaker, our Immigration Minister, Erica Stanford, unveil a range of changes to the likes of the accredited employer worker visa scheme, and also she, at the weekend, put in a number of measures that will address migrant worker exploitation. And so we have got huge challenges and huge workloads ahead of us, and a number of legal precedents that we believe that previous administrations, 3 Labor governments, 2 national governments, have looked at it and have not proceeded on goodwill. And some of those people and some of those governments have been led by constitutional experts like Sir Geoffrey Palmer. This is an exhausted piece of work that's looked at it, and successive governments have unfortunately, for the other side of the House, unfortunately for their argument, have not proceeded on a number of firm grounds. So, Madam Chair, we as a government understand and continue to foster the strong relationships with Pacifica and Pacific nations. I want to acknowledge the great work that the very busy Health Minister is doing, as also Minister of Pacific Affairs, Shane Reti. And if the bill progresses, it does and it will have implications on current citizenship settings. And so, Madam Speaker, we have given this, previous parliaments have given this considerable time, energy and argument over 4 decades. And we believe, on balance, that for this to go to Select Committee is, at this stage, in a private members' bill format and forum, is not appropriate. The members opposite say, oh, well, you're in charge now. Well, Madam Speaker, can I just remind them that they were in charge with the biggest majority in MMP history 6 months ago. They were in charge with a single party majority just 6 months ago. And so, Madam Speaker, everyone has looked at this. Successive Prime Ministers have looked at this. Successive governments have looked at this. And we, on this side of House, have also looked closely at it. We have also been talking to friends like our friend Arthur and I. We have also been lobbied hard. We have also taken legal advice. But on the balance of it, National will oppose this bill. Thank you.
Honourable Carmel Cipollone.
Talofa lava, Madam Speaker, and talofa lava to the House. To all of our Samoan community who have come along today to support this bill, can I acknowledge you? Many of the people that are here today are not just here to support the kaupapa of today. They were here in 2003. Outside Parliament, there were one or many of the 90,000 people that signed the petition at the time and have been fighting for this change for decades. Can I acknowledge the Green Party member Te Anau Tuiono, one of only 6 Pacific members of Parliament at the moment, and can I just say on record that the other 5 who are in the Labour Party stand behind Te Anau Tuiono with respect to this bill that he is attempting to pass. Madam Speaker, I'm going to start with the Dawn Raid's apology. The Dawn Raid's apology was a formal acknowledgement of the discriminatory implementation of immigration laws that led to the Dawn Raids. However, beyond the Dawn Raids, the Muldoon-led national government continued on their trajectory with the 1982 retrospective removal of the right to citizenship for those Samoans born between 1924 to 1948. So I do find it very interesting that the member Cameron Brewer says that he doesn't want to retroactively reinstate citizenship for Samoans when it was retrospectively taken away from them. The removal of citizenship rights for any country is contentious. In fact, New Zealand has been at the forefront in some incidences of criticising other countries internationally for this. Sadly, the New Zealand government did exactly this themselves in 1982, and this continues to be something that is deemed controversial and rightly so. The actions that followed the Dawn Raid apology were not exhaustive. As part of the apology, we provided educational scholarships, access to the Manaaki New Zealand short-term scholarship training courses, support for Pacific artists and historians to develop a comprehensive written and oral account of the Dawn Raids, but no one at that time implied that the work required by New Zealand governments to demonstrate a genuine understanding of the discrimination and trauma the Pacific community had endured was complete. The apology provided a platform for remorse, remembrance and reflection of that dark time that should and could inform ongoing future policy decisions. What we have before us is another opportunity to honour the spirit of the Dawn Raid's apology, and we truly hope that other political parties in this House will see this. I'm not going to pretend that this is where it ends. It would be remiss of me not to mention the policy Labor took into the last election, where we would have provided the opportunity for some that were here illegally to regularise their immigration status. This work has not been forgotten by the Labor Party. Turning my mind back to the bill in front of us, Te Anau Tuiono has stated clearly, we are talking about 3,000 to 5,000 people, not all of whom would want to take the opportunity up. It is the right thing to do, at least to allow the bill to go to select committee. Off the back of the significant contribution Samoans have made to Aotearoa, it is the right thing to do. On behalf of the nearly 200,000 Samoans who have made New Zealand their home, it is the right thing to do. In the spirit of the 1962 Treaty of Friendship between Samoa, where we pledged the two countries would be governed by a spirit of close friendship, it is the right thing to do. And with the acknowledgement of the discriminatory immigration policy our Samoan community endured before and during the period that this legislation was passed, it is the right thing to do. I want to implore all political parties to at least support this to select committee. There is no precedent being set when it is only being considered at select committee. That is where we get to consider the advice, the submissions from the community, and to hear from the legal experts. We don't need to hear from the people who think they are legal experts in the House today. Madam Speaker. Order. Labor is represented by our Samoan community. Labor is here to support the Samoan community. We stand by our Green Party brother in supporting this bill today.
I call Pamjit Pama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. I would like to start by congratulating the member. Giano Tuono for his members' bill being drawn from the ballot. I know it's quite exciting to have members' bill drawn, but it also brings a bit of nervousness until you know which way different parties are going to vote. So this bill is Restoring Citizenship Removed by Citizenship, Western Samoa Act 1982 bill. So basically this bill is to repeal that 1982 bill. And Madam Speaker, I want to just ease that members' nervousness by saying that ACT Party has decided to support this bill to Select Committee. Order. And yes, I know some members are looking quite surprised, but this is what ACT Party stands for. We believe in equality, we believe in fairness. So we want to really assess this bill on the basis of these two things, equality and fairness. And I think we will get this opportunity to do that in the Select Committee process, because we would like to hear from submitters what submitters have to say on this bill. We would also like to see what advisors have to say on this bill. But I also want to point out this, while I acknowledge the community leaders from Samoan community here in the gallery, thank you so much for taking the time out to be here today. That in the Select Committee process, we expect that the Samoan community leaders and Samoan community members will, I'm assuming this, all of them will support this bill, but it will be important for us to hear from other people as well, overall, like from New Zealand, to see what they think about this bill. And our support is at this stage only for the first reading. So we will decide how we will vote on this bill after we get the opportunity to see what the Select Committee process looks like and what submitters have said and what advisors have said. And Madam Speaker, I also want to acknowledge the member for reaching out to me and some of my caucus colleagues as well, advocating for his bill. So thank you for that. And clearly this bill is in overall, when it's looked at, is something that is to look at a historic matter. And when we look at that historic matter, in my view, this is my view, which obviously we want to explore in the Select Committee process, is that time the citizenship of those people was revoked because those people acquired Samoan citizenship. And they acquired Samoan citizenship because Samoa became, at that time it was Western Samoa, and now Samoa became independent in 1962. So it was considered that people, those who acquired Samoan citizenship, they chose their allegiance to Samoa over New Zealand. And that was the reason why their New Zealand citizenship was revoked in that 1982 Act. So it's very important for us to note this. And I would also like to bring this to everybody's attention, that our view is by passing that legislation, what New Zealand did was perfectly fine within the legal framework of that time. So New Zealand was within its rights to do what it did at that time. And referring to the member's letter that was attached to the email that came from a member, the member has listed various reasons why this bill should be supported. One of the reasons that is listed in the letters which I want to talk about is the member says that this bill will address the racist origins of the Act. Madam Speaker, we want to say that we do not see that that 1982 Act was about being racist, because if it was about being racist, then we know that even in 1982 there were people from so many different parts of the world, then citizenships of all those people would have been revoked if it was based on race. But the basis was because Samoa became independent and people decided to acquire Samoan citizenship, and because they had acquired Samoan citizenship, their New Zealand citizenship was revoked. So this is really important to note, but as we have said, we want to go with a very open mind to the Select Committee process and see what submitters have to say. And as I also said, it's not just about one community, what they are saying, but we would like to hear from the wider community, whole of New Zealand, and also advisors to see where this bill sits for going forward. And with that, Madam Speaker, I would say that we are supporting this bill in the first reading. Thank you.
I call the Honourable Casey Costello.
I would first like to acknowledge Te Anea Tuono for bringing this bill to the House. I think it's an important piece of work, Restoring Citizenship Removed by Citizenship, Western Samoa Act 1982 bill. I would also acknowledge, and I think it must be with great sadness, that this bill is being brought to the House without Efesa Collins being here to share it with you. New Zealand First is here to listen to the Pacific community. Our leader, and excuse me for my pronunciation, Va'ova Manaya Winston Peters, has advocated through initiatives such as the Pacific Reset and continues to advocate for our Pacific communities. We support our Pacific neighbours and the communities that make up our country. That is why New Zealand First will be supporting this bill to Select Committee. It is the Select Committee process that will give us an opportunity to consider and make amendments that are necessary. The bill is attempting to restore citizenship to those in Western Samoa that lost it when the Citizenship Western Samoa Act 1982 was passed. We acknowledge that, yes, there has been over 40 years that the effect of this bill has been reviewed and considered and reflected upon. It will mean that approximately 5,000 people who lost citizenship in 1982 will be able to apply for and receive citizenship by grant. We acknowledge this doesn't confer citizenship directly, but creates automatic eligibility to apply for and receive citizenship. We know there's been numerous attempts to repeal this Act and acknowledge the petition in 2003 and again the former MP Arthur Anei for his work. Now this member's bill is before the House. We think it is an important consideration. I myself enjoy wonderful whānau members who are in New Zealand from the Samoan community. I've lived and worked most of my life in South Auckland, and we are enriched and blessed by the contribution Samoan community makes to our schools, to our communities, to our collective organisations. I would like to see robust conversations. There will, of course, be considerations we have to reflect on. We have to understand the impacts. And, of course, being a government, we have to consider the financial implications. We know that will be a process, and that process should take place in Select Committee, where we can hear fairly, calmly and rationally from those who are affected. We will not lose. I think we will gain from the opportunity of this conversation. I think it is really important to reflect that we have all been blessed. I have worked with wonderful men and women who have come from Samoa, some of whom have saved my life on a couple of occasions, so I acknowledge that completely. We are, and when I think many of us gave our maiden speeches in this House, we talked about the opportunities to work bipartisan, to work across the House to find our common ground, to talk about what brings us together rather than divides us. I think this is an opportunity to demonstrate how we can do that. I look forward to the opportunity, and New Zealand First look forward to the opportunity of having these discussions and really analysing what we are going to achieve here. The fact that this matter has been sitting around for 40 years should not be something that we're afraid of. It should be the reason that we actually take the initiative to sit down. So again, I commend the member for bringing this to the House. I acknowledge the sadness that must exist because Efeso's not here to join in this, but I take pleasure in supporting this bill to the Select Committee.
I call Mariamino Kapakingi.
Tēnā koe te pika. Te tuatahi mihi atu ki te kua tai mai tā tātou rōpū tangata mana tātou katoa kanu te mihi nau mai aru mai ki tēnei whare. Tēnā tātou. Me te mea anō me mihi ki te speaker mai te Samoan Parliament kanu te mihi ki a koe e te pāpā. Kauni te mihi kia koe e te pāpā Upito William Sio tēnā ro hoki koe. Me te mihi kia koe mai te kiingi, a ko koe tēnā ka noho tata I Wainganui I te kaumārua, kaunui te mihi kia koe. Ko koe tēnā te tangata ka pupui te ahi I rangiriri, kaunui te mihi, kaunui te mihi, kaunui te mihi. I stand to acknowledge and be grateful and to fully support this idea and this discussion today, Madam Speaker. And without it, I think we would not be doing our job as Pāti Māori. The whakapapa of this bill takes us back in time to an era not so long ago, in a time of the Polynesian Panthers, of the dawn raids. And you know the picture that comes to mind right now is Hone, Haruira. And many of those, our whānau no te tautoko reo Māori katoa ka tautoko wenei whānau. Ngā tamatoa, of a time where Māori and Pacifica joined together to fight back against the relentless infringement of our rights as Pacifica and Māori that are Muldoon or national government, not too dissimilar to our current one afflicting upon us. This era saw the rise of Pacific activism which responded to openly racist treatment. It was 1976 when dawn raids began, targeting Pacific households accused of harbouring overstayers, despite it being those of European ethnicity who made up 2/3 of all overstayers in New Zealand at the time. Events such as this inspired activism from the Polynesian Panthers, and it is important, I recognise here, not only their commitment to their people, but also ours. They fought alongside us during the 1975 Land March, Bastion Point, and for the right to equality during the Springbok Tour. And while the communities most impacted by events of the dawn raids have finally received their apology from the Crown, and there's been a few apologies in the last maybe 24 hours, but I suggest that the government might have to be prepared for more apologies to come. From that side, I mean. By the events of the dawn raids have finally received the apology from the Crown, there has been little action taken to prove the sincerity of this. The affected community have not yet truly received their fair compensation. The amendments to this bill are the start of that process. The bill will restore the right of citizenship to our Samoan community born between 1924 and 1949. That was stripped away with the introduction of the Western Samoa Act of 1982. Amendments to this bill will remedy and illustrate restorative action to the racial discrimination that our Pacific community were most certainly subject to during this time period. It is our responsibility to ensure that those unfairly treated by this very institution are both witness to and recipients of restorative action. And it is important that whatever this restorative action may be, that it is those impacted communities, I'll just repeat that, those impacted communities who inform us what this action is, and that it is not those of us in this House who have never walked a day in their lives that dictate what it is that they think they need. So I can stand in support of this bill, and I'm thrilled to, and our party are absolutely glad to, and so we should, as presented by our whanaunga te anau. So mihi atu au pauri ki au pauri tēnā koe. As we Māori can both acknowledge and understand what it is to experience a historical and ongoing mistreatment from this institution. I'm glad I want us to get to select committee. We should have select committee on this. If we don't, we are still saying we know what's best for you. And that is simply not the truth. It is not that we should describe what it is for others that don't look like us, sound like us, and feel like us. And I'm saying that as a Māori.
The member's time has expired.
Darn it.
I call the Honourable Barbara Edmonds. Au te whaatalofa atu ma le whaalo alo ma lo le soifua maua ma le langi e mama. The 685 to the world. For those members of the House who do not know what 685 means, it is the calling code for Samoa. But it took the 682, the Cook Islands, to bring this bill to the House. I acknowledge you, brother. It's only a couple of times we like losing to the Cook Islanders, but today we'll give it to you, my brother. Madam Speaker, today is a historical day because we have seen the Labour Party support the Greens. We have seen Te Pāti Māori support the Greens. We have seen the ACT Party support the Greens. Never thought I'd see this day. And I've seen New Zealand First support the Greens, support the bill. And that is a historical day because today rights the wrongs of what happened in the 80s. Now, the unfortunate for me is I did not learn about our New Zealand history until I chose to learn it at university. And that is something wrong with our country. That's something such as remarkable as the stripping of citizenship rights for Samoan people who were born during a period when New Zealand administered them. Their government was removed through an act of this House. There is no point paying homage to the wars that we fought in Samoa and that plaque above the head of the Speaker if we do not right the wrongs of the past. And what we have seen is through community advocacy, is through a simple and very humble woman, Pāti Māori, we have seen what is possible through the power of people. The Samoan people in this country are proud of our roots and of our homeland. We are proud that we are the third most spoken language in this country. We are proud that we are the fastest growing Pacific population in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And yet we have had a historical wrong which is finally brought to the House, which this Labour Party wholeheartedly supports. And we want to thank those who have paved the path for this. We want to thank our elders, our mafukanga ministers, Anai Ata Anai. We want to thank Auntie Paula, who keeps sending me emails to make sure that I support this bill, and all our aunties and uncles, because when they tell you, you better support this bill, we better support this bill. Because the punishment that happens in our community is harder than any punishment that we would ever experience in this House. I also want to pay homage to the Wellington lawyer, George Rosenberg, who supported Pāti Māori during that court case. He understood the importance of why they had to test that. And for me, my father would have fallen within the Samoan Citizenship Act because he was born in Samoa in 1945. And there's a lot of our generation, the generation just above mine, that would have fallen within these particular rules had they been left in. But what has happened is that was removed, and then like my father and many other fathers and mothers who are here within the House today, they would have had to go through a process when by right, by birthright, they were born in a time when New Zealand administered their country. So, Madam Speaker, I want to thank the people who have brought this here today. I want to thank the rest of the parties who are supporting this bill. I want to ensure that the generation that comes after me, the generation of our children, who again are the fastest Pacific population in Aotearoa, New Zealand, fastest growing. Well, actually, some of them are quite fast. The fastest growing population, that they learn this history not because we've had to bring it to the House, but because New Zealand is going to teach its history in the schools. So that is the stage that we need to start pushing. But for tonight, we give our alofa and we celebrate what is a milestone of achievement, the 685 to the world, brought to you by the 682, but we take it. Whataitele lava. I call Tom Rutherford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And firstly, I want to acknowledge the contributions that have been given on this debate so far from across the House. The first contribution given, and congratulations to the member for having his bill drawn from the biscuit tin. It is a tough feat to get one drawn, so congratulations and well done. Listening to the debate this evening from across the House has been engaging. It's been challenging on a personal level. It's been thought-provoking. It's created an environment where people have felt safe to make their contributions to why they believe they should support or oppose the bill that is in front of us. So I want to acknowledge firstly the bill being drawn and having it here debated today. I also quickly want to acknowledge those in the community that have joined us this evening. For many, first time ever coming to Parliament and experiencing the halls of power in New Zealand. Welcome. Welcome. We stand here to represent and work on behalf of you. We may not always get things right. We may not always achieve what we intend to, what we want to deliver on. But I want to acknowledge you being here and your presence. Thank you for making that effort to be here. My colleague Cameron Brewer really outlined our party's position on this bill in his excellent 10-minute contribution. But I do want to acknowledge what is blaringly obvious is that the bill has the support of the wider House. And so if the bill comes to the Governance and Administration Select Committee, I'm not sure yet which Select Committee the member is intending to nominate. If it does, though, come to that Select Committee, he's nodding, he's telling me yes, good man, then I look forward to the further discussions we're going to have on the bill. I look forward to understanding the perspectives that we're going to be hearing on that Select Committee and the real-world implications that this bill may be having for people. And I appreciate the opportunity that those people will have at the Select Committee with the wider support that has been given across this House. And thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Well done.
Nae, ua e whaafiti, e te leiloina, o le whangata awili. Ai moli mau i tamaiti, ma lea whawhine o kilisi, o oi lavana e whaapa, o le whangata awili. O Governor, you have lied. You say you don't know whose machine gun it was, but the children and the daughter of Kilisi all bear witness that you alone pulled that trigger. Whangawhetalei, Madam Speaker, I stand here today. I welcome our Samoan community, in particular our guest Whangawhetalei and delegation. Those who are listening at home and offshore, that I began my talanoa, my kōrero, with a song that was written for the time, a historical account of Samoa's Black Saturday, when Te Pōata Masesele Alofi III was martyred during a peaceful march against New Zealand and Great Britain's rule of Samoa. That particular incident, there was a horrific shooting by New Zealand military police of the Mau independence demonstrators in Apia, Samoa. That particular day, 11 Samoans died, including the independent leader, Paramount Chief Te Pōata Masesele Alofi III, on the Saturday, 28 December 1929. Madam Speaker, for the record, the Paramount Chief Te Pōata Masesele Alofi III was the great-grandfather of our former colleague, Anae Neru Leavasa, former Labour MP for Takanini. Madam Speaker, on the walls of this House are 12 carved circular Rimu memorial wreaths around the balcony, and just above your head bears the name of significant engagement involving New Zealand troops in World War I, and it's the memorial wreath and ribbon of Samoa's name engaged in there. Many New Zealanders do not know, Madam Speaker, or do not understand that New Zealand administered Samoa for 48 years, from 1914 to 1962. The New Zealand administration was worse than the German administration of Samoa. The German administration of Samoa, 1900 to 1914, and in 2002, Right Honourable Helen Clark, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, gave a formal apology. Madam Speaker, you have heard my colleagues traverse today's bill, and I want to, in particular, thank Te Anau Toyono, and we remember our brother, Efeso Whanana Collins, Whanana Efeso Collins, because we miss him. Madam Speaker, you've heard Carmel Sepuloni, Deputy Leader for the Labour Party. You've heard Barbara Edmonds, Finance Spokesperson for the Labour Party. We are the daughters of the descendants of Samoa. We support this bill, the Labour Party supports this bill, and I want to thank the other parties for their support, that they support this bill to the select committee process. And I want to call and challenge the national government. I want to call on you because you need to reconsider your position for this bill. Our Samoans have been in this country for decades. We are asking for your support, that you would hear through the select committee, Samoans need to have their say. Many Samoans have served this country for many, many decades. And what legacy do we want to leave for our young people, the future of tomorrow? So, Madam Speaker, those are the points that I wanted to raise. As you've heard, as you can see, that the Samoan community is here in force. You've heard Barbara talk about 685 to the world, because it's not just them up there. There's a whole global audience listening to us. And Madam Speaker, I really do thank you for the opportunity. I want to acknowledge all of our colleagues that are here from the Labour Party to support this bill through to the next stage. So, Madam Speaker, I finish off those words and I thank you. Whaftaitele, molo wawanoa manuia.
Madam Speaker, and a really special moment to speak this evening on this bill, and I will just try and keep my time a little shorter so that we can get the final speech in before dinner, because I think it's important that we honour and acknowledge the guests and not have them have to come back. So I'm just going to try and condense this, if that's okay with the House, most in respect of our guests here. And look, I love Samoa. They gave us Tana Umanga and Jerry Collins. How could we not love this country? Well, I had the pleasure of flying Jerry Collins in the back of my helicopter once, and I can tell you he was the loudest and highest pitched scream I've heard in my life. But it was a real honour, because they were two guys that I really looked up to in their heyday. And I do want to acknowledge, that this is can be at times difficult to engage in a debate without getting too emotive and losing focus. And, we talk about, and the member opposite mentioned the wreath acknowledging Samoa. And I, on the one hand, I acknowledge that this was about opposing colonial rule and not wanting to put one country and their occupation and their rights of citizenship, but also the responsibilities that came with it, above another country. And yet it was also done when New Zealand went in 1914, as was just mentioned, it was done without firing a shot. It was completely peaceful. And isn't it appropriate that we can have this discussion, and as it no doubt moves through to select committee and wherever it may go from there, that we can bring different perspectives, that we can have these conversations, but we don't have to be firing shots at each other. It's actually okay to tease out some of these ideas and to use the parliamentary processes we have to work through this and to talk about these things. And I note that what this bill does is restore citizenship not to those in more recent times from Samoa, not to those who were living in New Zealand, because they always had it. And even in 1982, their citizenship was, of course, protected if they were living in New Zealand. But the specific date period is nothing actually to do with New Zealand's colonial trusteeship, as it was known at the time of Samoa, but it's actually around British being a British subject. It's not about New Zealand. And so I think we do need to think through this thing. We're giving New Zealand citizenship in response to British trusteeship or British citizenship. So it's actually not quite as simple as maybe some of the emotive arguments bring out. So I do think it's important that we consider exactly why it is without just getting into the kind of the Russian doll of the Privy Council said this, but then that government said this, and now we're going back to the other one. So I think there are some complex issues to go through. If we want to genuinely have equality, if we want to genuinely look at these issues, are we looking at the colonial rules? Are we looking at the old citizenship? Or are we looking at what is best for New Zealand, which is ultimately what this House has the responsibility of doing? And so with that, and in view of the time, I'll end my contribution here, and I do again just want to acknowledge all those that have spoken before and those that have come to Taitoa support this bill tonight. Thank you.
Tiana Tuionu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Whawhetai tele lava to all members of the House who have engaged with the debate today. And also want to once again thank you to all the community members for coming to Parliament. And to emphasise that this Parliament is your Parliament. This is your place. This is the people's place as well. And once again to recognise, acknowledge the Speaker of the House of the Samoan Parliament and the Samoan members of Parliament that are here with us today, and people from the High Commission. Madam Speaker, thank you to those members that understood the intent of the bill. Yep. Madam Speaker, fairness is at the heart of the bill. It's very simple. We had a group of New Zealand citizens who had their citizenship recognised, and then they had their citizenship removed by statute. It's just unfair, plain and simple. States should not be able to remove citizenship wholesale like this. Yep. It is just not. It's just not the right thing to do. I just wanted to address some of the comments from the National Party, and I hope that when this comes to the Select Committee, that they will engage with it in an open mind, that they will engage with this topic in a way that the community needs those stories to be heard. And as they were speaking, I was actually reflecting on the powerful debate that we had when the Dawn Raids apology was moving through this House, Madam Speaker. And I reflect on the then words of the then National Party leader, Judith Collins, where she actually talked about this bill. And one of the points that she said, and that I agreed with, is perhaps it would have been better if the National Party and the Labour Party both did the iwhonga, because during that time period, the Dawn Raids happened through both governments as well. So it is in that spirit I invite the National Party to engage in this. I do also want to emphasise that this is automatic eligibility for a citizenship by grant. We could and we should talk about what are the parameters of what that grant could look like, because I do take that point and acknowledge that point that has been shared by members and also within the media as well. We don't want to be enabling mass migration. This is a call for the Samoan government. It is something that should be done between bilaterals, between governments. But what we can do is provide a pathway for citizenship for those elders who had their citizenship taken away from them unjustly. And to acknowledge that some of them are here tonight. I want to acknowledge the comments from my relatives in the Labour Party. I was going to say Samoan Party for a bit. Maybe I can tonight, right? And thank them for their comments. I was reflecting on the history that Lamonga shared, Madam Speaker, about a history that New Zealand should know about, because it is not just Samoan history, it is our history. And if we really learn about that history, we can get this relationship right. We can get this relationship well, because that is what we need as a region. We need to understand the history. It is a painful history, but it is something that we must unravel. It is something that we must deal with. And there are things that we do well, and I think we should continue to do well, and that is that relationship diplomacy. There are tensions, geopolitical tensions in the Pacific, and we can navigate that well when we do relationship diplomacy. This is relationship diplomacy, Madam Speaker. If we treat the elders of Samoa with respect and dignity and offer a pathway of citizenship back here to Aotearoa, New Zealand, that is good for Aotearoa and good for Samoa and ultimately good for our region. Madam Speaker, whawhetai tele lava, mei taki rā nui nui, 682 to 685. I commend this bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. No? I probably had to turn it down because of the noise. Are we going to put the question again? The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Mr Clark, could you please conduct the party vote?
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 votes in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 votes in favour.
Pāti Māori.
6 votes in favour.
While the clerk is adding the votes, can I just please ask for some restraint as we have some procedural matters that we have to work our way through. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Clark. The ayes are 74, the noes are 49. The motion is agreed to.
Restoring Citizenship Removed by Citizenship, Western Samoa Act 1982 Bill, first reading.
The question is that the Restoring Citizenship Removed by Citizenship Western Samoa Act 1982 Bill be considered by the Governance and Administration Committee. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Members, the House is adjourned until... The House is suspended until 7:30.
Live coverage from the House of Representatives will resume at 7:30 p.m. Until then, some of today's earlier proceedings will be repeated.
Mr. Speaker.
Te arihitanga I roto I o mātai whakaararohanga kia mōhio ai, kia whakaiti ai, tā mātai whakahaere I ngā take o te whare nei. Mō te oranga, te maungarongo me te aroha o Aotearoa. Āmene.
Amen.